Germany remained hopeful for round of 16 after holding Spain at 1-1. Every of the 4 teams in Group E may advance to knockout stage and nothing will be confirmed until the last game. In Group F, 2 traditional strong teams, Croatia and Belgium, seems to be on different tracks after Sunday's games. Welcome back to CGTN Sports Talk. I am Li Xiang, and I'm glad to be joined by my colleague Josh here.
Great to be back.
Hey, so Germany, they really survived because when Morata scored that goal, I really thought, okay, this is over. Germany out.
Yeah, because up until that point, the thing with Spain is, so Germany had set up in a way where they kind of narrowed the pitch. It made it difficult for Spain to play through them. But the way they were still managing to move at least down the wings, the way they were doing it, it was really as if, we've joked several times about how their team is just like 10 midfielders on a pitch. But when they reach the top end and the opponent's box, it's like they just run out of space. They just start kind of passing it to each other, taking shots if something becomes available. So then Alvaro Morata gets brought on. And that's like just before the hour mark. And he's a player who, it's funny how when I was watching this, I was thinking like, oh, he's going to be like the next big thing for Spain. And then I remembered like he's at Juventus, he's been at Real Madrid, he's been at Atletico Madrid, he was at Chelsea for a while. That's why I last remember him. He feels like he's always slightly underrated. He's like a slightly less clinical Fernando Torres, I guess, in that he's always great at finding the space directly in front of the goal where you need him to be. And Germany had got so used to just kind of flooding their back line, so there's no space for them to kind of ping pong the ball around. They were caught off guard by it pretty badly. However, Niklas Füllkrug, who he looks much older than he is. As soon as he came on, and that was pretty late on, I believe. I want to say that was 70 minutes, even later. So they replaced Thomas Müller with him. Müller is in this awkward position where, as a somewhat maverick player, he's always been great at finding space. Now he's a little bit too old for that and just seems to be always out of place instead. When they replaced him with Füllkrug, you could see that there was a bit more impetus, a bit more life, but still it was like a lot of a scramble to get the ball towards the net. Like they just kind of had to put 3-4 guys bursting through the back line of Spain and just kind of hope it fell correctly. That being said, in the opening half there was that header from Rudiger that got ruled offside, which makes me think that the answer to the Spain team, even though Germany couldn't do it, is if you just play very like classic, very direct football and just kind of muscle it through them in reverse, they won't really know what to do.
That's true. What I really noticed interesting is that, like you said, Spain had 10 midfielders. Germany has been known for playing this strikerless squad, but it was actually 2 very traditional finishing centers that scored the 2 goals. I mean, Spain were maybe not cornered, but already found it very difficult to work around the ground. So that's why they sent Morata here. And then Germany conceded the first goal. They found that, okay, there's no way we could play like this and at least tie the score. That's why, like you said, they replaced Müller with Füllkrug. Is it possible that actually both teams in, say, difficult games, they actually need a center like this?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing which I was going to say. The way that Hansi Flick has already modified the team, like starting Goretzka this time, having a way more muscular and strong midfield, he seems to be adapting on a game-by-game basis. And based on the 2 that we've seen so far, the number one thing I would take away is they need to have a proper centre forward, and Niklas Füllkrug seems to be the best option they have right now. I know that officially, if I remember correctly from the first game, Youssoufa Moukoko is supposed to be the next big thing in that position.
Yeah.
But he's like 17, 18, something like that, whereas Füllkrug is like obviously just a little bit older, but he seems so much more clinical, so much more powerful behind the ball, that I feel like he should be starting up front instead of Thomas Müller. Perhaps bring him slightly further back because the way they've kind of have it, it's like a 4-2-3-1 formation. Gundogan is in the middle, more of like a pivot for the front attacking three. But if you were to say, I don't know, move him further back and put Thomas Muller in the middle, then you could have his kind of football IQ keeping things in motion. But you definitely need something stronger up front.
So in the other game of this group, Japan, which were, I want to say, already praised to the cloud, lost to Costa Rica on the in this game, and then now they blew at least 60% of their chances of advancing to the knockout stage. And that goal they conceded was I think it's the biggest mistake of the World Cup I have seen so far.
Yeah, definitely. That was such a weird game. Like, because the way I was thinking about it is that was the early game, which means it was 1 p.m. in Qatar, and a lot of the games have been 0-0 in the first half, which has always seemed to me that a sign of like when the players get out there, obviously they're already warmed up, but because the weather and the climate and the humidity, like they kind of have to warm up in proper conditions, kind of the equivalent of like a boxer saying they need to get punched before they know they're in a fight. The difference is with Japan is, again, basing on what they did in their first game, it felt like they take the first half like a boxer, read their opponent, switch in the second half, attack correctly. They seem to be doing the same here, but it was as if like in the first half they learned, okay, Costa Rica aren't a threat, so we just have to throw bodies forward and everything will be fine. And then in doing so, they left a massive gap. They fumbled the ball, and then the keeper Gonda, he came out so far forward that when it got chipped over his head, you see he got a hand to it. Like where he's standing on his line, that would have been a save. He would have at least knocked it up onto the bar.
Yeah.
Instead, he was so far basically outside of his box that tapping it gave it like a higher bump almost. So now it was guaranteed to fall into the net. And from then, all Costa Rica had to do was sit back, because you saw the way they were playing in the first half. They were in the position where they had already lost so many goals that to them, I think a 0-0 would have been a success here. Just get a point, get out the group. I mean, just get a point, just not finish on 0. So it was like a back five with basically everyone collapsing back. I believe, was it Campbell who was their striker? It was either began with a C. Either way, it was like one floating striker up the pitch, and everyone else was like on the edge of the penalty box, slightly pushing forward. They were just designed to be like a wall you can't break down. So for them to end up in a situation like this where they can nick one and then maybe escape the group with 3 points, depending on what happens in the next game, it's very much a case of Japan may have cost themselves a position in the knockouts, may have let Germany through, all with one very simple, very clumsy, very stupid mistake.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think Spain, though they haven't confirmed yet, they will make it out of this group. Which of the 3 teams do you think will join them?
Well, that's it, because now Germany is facing Costa Rica. That should be a very simple 3 points. This, it isn't even just this group or this game. Like, the other games that took place yesterday kind of had a very any given Sunday, anything can happen sort of vibe. I wouldn't be shocked if Japan got a point. But based on what we've seen so far, I have a strong feeling it's going to be Germany and Spain getting out of the group, with Germany's lifeline entirely existing because of Japan.
Oh yeah,
like they will be the team that goes home the most disappointed. Like, Qatar were terrible hosts, but they kind of played to their ability was very, very poor, but they gave their all. Of everything that's happened so far, like, this result is like the worst result that has happened for any team.
Yeah, that's true. And in Group F, like, you do remember De Bruyne, he said before last night's game, he said Belgium already lost their best chance to win the World Cup, which should have been 4 years ago. He said they were too old. Yep. When they were playing Morocco, everything he said basically was true, because they seem to be pressing, and then they conceded one goal, then they conceded the other. Actually, there was another goal which was ruled offside. So this was a terrible loss for Belgium at the end of their
Yeah,
golden
I
generation.
yeah, like that statement, find a fault in it. It's completely true. You look at this team; they were creaky in their first game. In this one, against a much younger, much more vibrant team, you can be creaky against someone like Croatia, who are similarly old. But you look at Jan Vertonghen feels like he's been around forever. Same with Toby Alderweireld. There's no pace going forward at all. The De Bruyne still is absolutely world class. Don't get me
Mm,
wrong, but he shouldn't be maybe the most sprightly guy in his team.
yeah.
And the young legs of Morocco, just anytime they were on the counter, anytime they were on the break, they were just pressing, pressing, pressing. Hakim Ziyech and Boufal are probably the two most famous players I recognise. But then Youssef Nesri was the striker. He plays in La Liga. He was always causing trouble. But then the goals came when there were changes made in the second half. So it was like basically reset with even younger legs after an hour of play. Took off Hakimi, took off Amala, took off Boufal, took off Nesri, like I said. Replaced them with four younger guys. And then moments later, within 5 minutes, the goals were scored. The direct free kick came because Belgium was so concerned with the Moroccan team bursting in
Mm-hmm.
that they were expecting crosses being played in, a free kick setting up a free header, something like that. Instead, Sabiri just had it on the edge, like basically where a corner is, maybe 5 yards further in, swung it in, got that goal, and they were just rattled from then on. The feeling was Morocco, be it the fans in the arena, be it the players themselves, suddenly there was an even bigger jolt of life, and they just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and Ziyech set up the winner with 2 minutes into extra time. But that Belgium team, it's like they just look old.
Mm-hmm.
They just look, if you push the pace against them, they can't keep up. Lukaku was brought on late, which was the technique they used in 2014 because that was what they used. That was what they used to get beyond the US.
Mm.
You basically push against the goal for as long as you can. Then you bring on a power player like Lukaku who can play with his back to the goal, bully his way in and score. But that doesn't work when you aren't already threatening the goal. It doesn't work when you aren't moving the ball fast down the wings. Amadou Onana, who plays for Everton, was like the youngest guy or the most threatening guy, and they took him off after an hour to replace him with Yuri Tielemans, expecting, I guess, more of like what he can do at Leicester. But again, that's when he's playing in a Leicester team, which is like kind of vibrant. This is not. This really feels like the end of a generation in not even a way of like Wales, where it was like, okay, the star players are old and there's no younger talent coming through. It just feels like they've been hanging around too long, and this needs to be get rid of Martinez, get rid of, let's say, 6, 7 of the starting 11, and just rebuild.
Mm. I know that Belgium are not literally out, but maybe their last game against Croatia could be the last game for a lot of their players that are in their squad now. So, as a similarly aged squad, how did Croatia manage to come back from such an early allowing of the goal and then score 4 goals to come back to win?
That was it, because like I say, I felt like anything could happen in this game on this day. Everything went in the inverse of what you thought. So
Mm-hmm.
having seen the young legs of Morocco beat the older team, I assume Canada would do the same, especially when Alphonso Davies got that goal in like 67 seconds or whatever it
Yeah.
was, because they just ran down the pitch and that was it. But that kind of gave them away because they are so focused on attack that there is basically no defense. Like their wing backs just push high, their centre backs end up just being like a back two almost. And this Croatia team, even though they are old, they are so smart with their like just football IQ, with their ability to read the game. Like Luka Modric now is 37, and he's settled into that role that like Andrea Pirlo had towards the end. Only he's slightly further up the pitch, because Pirlo would be like right on the back line, and he'd just have like the vision to see where to send the ball. He does the same, but from slightly further up the pitch. And so many times it would be a case of like, a Canadian player, like say Hutchinson or someone, pressing down in the midfield, trying to close him down. And he'd know at the very last moment just to play like a quick 1-2 to Kovacic, or just to play it with the outside of his boot. And they were like not quick, but they were creating so much space that it didn't matter. And that's one of those signs where, like, for a fact, every one of these players is world class. Like, they reached the final. In my opinion, they should have won in 2018. But the fact that they are slightly slower doesn't really matter when you're against a team that's not as well versed, not as experienced, playing a little bit too much with their heart on their sleeve, like Canada were. So when they started racking up goals, every single one of them came from just being set up by Perisic or someone who should be getting closed down in terms of pure physicality, man for man. But the way he could just trick his opponent, dummy around him, whatever it was absolutely genius.
Since you mentioned 4 years ago, when back then no one actually thought, of course, before the quarterfinals and semifinals, no one actually thought that Croatia could go that far. Because in almost every game after the group stage, they were so, you can say resilient, you can say slow, you can also say struggling, but they always won. It's like, okay, let's pull everything, let's slow everything down, and then we can beat you with our control of the midfield, with our smart way of playing, with our experience, with our skills. And even after 4 years, Croatia still got all of that. And if, say, they make out of this group, whoever they're meeting next, Germany, Spain, or Costa Rica, or Japan, will have a really headache when they're dealing with Croatia on the field.
Yeah, that's it. They are in the position where, like, I feel like they are perhaps 2 years behind Belgium, in the sense of, like, you can see that this is their all-star team, and you can also see that they are running out of legs. I mean, they still have Dejan Lovren playing in the back line, which is insane. As a centre back, he really shouldn't be there at all. But at the same time, the quality of the players is undeniable, and they aren't for the knackers yard yet. So I can see them, when you see them with a team like Canada, well, Canada's very young, very inexperienced. I'm sure it'll be more difficult for them to do this to a Spain side, perhaps. But with the way you see how Spain play, I feel like that centre three of Modric, Kovacic, and Brozovic will be able to control the midfield long enough that it will just make life so hard for Spain that you could see them nicking a goal here, nicking a goal there, just from the difficulties they will cause. Even if, like I say, man for man, they're on the backslide, there's still so much quality within the players that I could very much see them getting off the round of 16. Not necessarily final contenders anymore, but still causing trouble.
Oh yeah, that's true. And I think so much for today. Thank you for listening. Hopefully we'll be hearing from you guys very soon tomorrow. See ya.
Speak to you next time.